not just that one little worksheet on either Rosa Parks or Martin Luther King that you and I both had in our elementary or high school classrooms, that one little chapter in that history book. No, I'm here today to charge that beyond Bath and Body Works putting out the red, black, and green candles in February, I'm here to charge that beyond Target putting out the black designers in the front of the store in February and Walmart putting out the red, black, and green ice cream for Juneteenth, that we should normalize it so that Black history is every day. So when we think about Sankofa reaching back in order to move forward, it led me to formulate this program that I'm sharing with you today, Redefining Blackness. You know why? Because we're in a state of emergency. We're in a state of emergency when we walk out on the street and we see Black people, and somebody correct me if I'm wrong, Black people who, where we are at the height of our level of accomplishment politically, educationally, through community, through corporate, through classroom, and all facets of the human experience. While we are on the upswing, we simultaneously are in the valley. So when you go out to the mall and you go out to the post office and you go to the airport and you see people who look like you in bonnets, in house shoes, in pajamas, with their pants hanging down, with hats to the back, with oversized sweatshirts, with hoods on, looking like a suspect and not a success, it's a state of emergency. So I'm here today to talk about how we can redefine Blackness. We're not going to let others tell our narrative. We're not going to let others who don't have our best interest in mind define us, because we are, as the principle of Kwanzaa says, Kuji Jakalia, we will define ourselves for ourselves. It's not aggressive. It's not demonstrative. It's not too sassy. It's just ownership. It's just us realizing that I'm going to give you three surefire ways that we can and you can immediately begin to redefine what it means to be Black. Because money, because attention, because other forces are pushing behind what it doesn't really mean to be Black, only what they think it means to be Black in their eyes, and it is being exploited from hither to yon. So I want to leave before I go, because we only got a few minutes, y'all. I want to leave you with three surefire methods that not only you could implement on your campus, in your home, with your friends and family, but also that you can implement in your own personal life. And you don't have to be Black to implement it, okay? Coming off the cusp of my brother who introduced the principle of Ubuntu, right? I am because we are. Well, we need to know who self is first. And it's not just letting others define it. It's us taking that ownership for ourselves. Number one, write this down, everybody. Somebody put it in the chat. Broaden awareness and understanding. Redefining Blackness means we have to broaden what we already know. Introducing yourself to the concept of white supremacy as a backing of the United States education system needs to be broad knowledge across the board. We need to know that people who look like us were not in the classrooms creating the curriculum. That's why you and I didn't get it in school. When holidays and observances and practices and people who worked in the Black liberation struggle were not ever talked about, we weren't the ones creating the curriculum. And so because of that, you had scholars and researchers like Carter G. Woodson, who said, hold on, y'all, we have been miseducated, period. So broadening your awareness and your understanding helps you become more comfortable being Black, talking Black, communicating with Black people, learning about Blackness, true Blackness. Let me give you a quick example before I move on to number 2. Just this summer, or early summer, late spring, I sojourned to the majestic continent. I try to go once a year. Didn't go in 21, obvious reasons, but I did go in 22. I went to Accra, Ghana, and on that almost 14, 15-day trip, we traversed to the Gold Coast, right on the western coast of Africa. We visited the Cape Coast Castle. I want everybody to Google it when you watch this later, all right? Cape Coast Castle was erected in the mid-late 16th century by the Portuguese. But then, after it was a trading post and the transatlantic slave trade started, the British occupied it, and it became one of the most famous out of about 40 different slave castles where enslaved Africans were held. I stood there at this big, huge white edifice, probably pristine in its day. No glass windows, just open air. At the top, it was glorious like heaven, which is where the governor would live. But down below was something called a dungeon. And there were dungeons for men and dungeons for women. There were dungeons for those who rebelled that needed to have a little bit more of a tight grip on them. I walked the grounds of people who were our ancestors, some 6, 7, 8 generations removed. And so I want to just say this on that point of creating awareness and understanding. Think about this just for a moment. You and I'm not looking at myself, I'm looking at camera, I'm looking at you right now. You and I, those that have been kissed by nature's sun, we are the results of the people who did not die, who sometimes had to march 1, 2, 300 miles from inner coastal Africa to the coast. And if you made it that far, you were held at the castle. And if you made it through the holding of the castle, through the beatings and the rapings and the lack of food and air, the heat, the sickness, the bile, if you made it through that, you got to march to the boat that took you to the big boat. And then if you made it across what we call the Middle Passage, you got to Virginia or South Carolina. And if you made it that far, there was another holding. And if you made it that far, you got to the auction block. And if you made it that far, you got to the plantation. Didn't know where you were going. But if you made it that far, we are the descendants of those people who lived through a living hell, circumstances you and I could never fathom, but we got that blood in us. We got that determination in us. You heard Jared say, we have that resiliency in us. So my point number 1, become aware. Broaden your awareness and your understanding of our story, not his story, but our story. Number 1. Number 2, you can't help what you don't understand. So READ, guess what? Readers are leaders. It's real easy to turn on TikTok, to turn on the gram. It's real easy to use our phones as sources of information. But when there was a law in this country that passed saying it is illegal to educate Black people, that should alone be your motivation to say, you know what? I think I'm going to go spend several hours at the library, pick up some books and educate myself. Mama may have Papa may have, but God bless the child that's got its own. So readers are leaders. Pick up a book and learn something new. Take time, even if it's 30 minutes a day, but be intentional with grasping our story. Number 2. Number 3, and my final point, y'all, we can't fix what we can't face. We're talking about redefining Blackness. So we can't fix it. The excessive, disproportionate numbers of Black men being gunned down by gun violence by other Black men. Let's not blame white people. I heard something on the gram this week. We can't blame white people for everything. Some things we must take accountability for. Some things we have to in a radical, intentional way. So we have to take charge of our education, our understanding, and then this third point, fixing it. But first, we got to face it. So I stand before you tonight. I stand before you this afternoon, imploring that perhaps sometimes you may have to walk alone. I stand in the state of Maryland right now. And last night I drove to the University of Delaware to give a talk to 275 sorority women on diversity, equity, and inclusion. And this GPS took me around, y'all. It took me around like this back roads way. And I said, Lord have mercy, this is still Maryland? I thought I was in Mississippi in 1899. I said, what is going on? It became very rural. Now, this is just because me, and I'm pretty knowledgeable of Black history and various figures within that movement. And so my mind immediately went to, wow, I'm in Maryland. I'm driving in a car in Maryland through these dark, cold, winding roads with big, tall trees in the woods and the forest to get to this beautiful campus. My God, how did Harriet Tubman feel, born Araminta Ross, when she escaped and left Dorchester, Maryland, just 167 miles from where this hotel is right now? When she went by herself, just armed with the breastplate of righteousness and the sword of faith. My God, she traversed through Maryland, through Delaware, and up through Philadelphia at night by herself. So I stand today empowered. My goodness. I stand today empowered, thinking and recalling not just the persistence, not just the grit and determination and resiliency, but the fortitude that Araminta Ross, known as Harriet Tubman, used when maybe she wanted to turn back around. I drove in an Audi A4 last night. She walked in the woods because, as we heard Jared also say, you want success more than you want to breathe. She wanted freedom more than she wanted to breathe. So whatever goal is standing in front of you right now, whatever opportunity is standing in front of you right now, maybe it's the pursuit of some more knowledge of this Black history, this rich, dense Black history. Let the very wind push at your back. The same one that guided Moses by herself, where she had nobody but maybe nature, God, revelation, manifestation, vision to keep going, as Morris Bishop said, forward ever and backward never. Thank you all so much for listening. I hope you were inspired. Can you feel my energy? Can you feel it? Because right now it's palpable. I'm sitting here motivating myself. If I were Marcus Garvey, I would say, up, 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 you mighty people, you will accomplish what you can. If I were Anna Julia Cooper, I would say, when and where I enter, the whole race enters with me. But since I'm just Tish Norman, I'm going to say I'm going to do something in this lifetime that had I never been born, it would have never happened. Thank you all so much. Peace, blessings, miracles. Go get it. It's yours.